Manchester United and possibly a delaying of this signing of Dorgu, who's coming in from Lecce. That was the expected situation. What's happening with that?
Yeah, I think we were told that he was due to fly in to undergo a medical sort of a couple of days ago, and that hasn't happened. Then we heard last night the medical had been delayed to the weekend. I think part of the negotiating process with Lecce is they wanting to play one more game. I believe they play tonight, which seems a little bit risky on both sides, really. If he was to pick up an injury, it would scupper them getting a few quid, and obviously would scupper his move to Manchester United. But yeah, there's nothing at the moment to suggest this move is off, but it's been delayed.
Do you know what? I had a really odd situation. I know you probably were across this as well because you were doing the Arsenal game, weren't you, on Wednesday night? The goalkeeper that plays for Girona, Pau Lopez, well, he replaced Gazzaniga, the former Tottenham guy who'd pulled his hamstring at the weekend and couldn't play in the Champions League. Now, their third choice goalkeeper wasn't registered for the Champions League squad, so Pau Lopez played. On the face of it, second choice goalkeeper playing in the Champions League, no problem. But earlier that week, he'd agreed a transfer to Lens. They'd pulled out of that because they had no cover for the Champions League games. And then he had agreed a deal to go and sign permanently, because he's on loan from Marseille, to Mexico, to a club in Mexico. So straight after the game, he played one game as a favour to Girona. Straight after that game against Arsenal, he got a plane, he's gone to Mexico, start a new career. I mean, what if he got injured in that match?
Yeah.
His whole career in Mexico would have been over.
It is risky, isn't it? I mean, maybe not so much for a goalkeeper, but with an outfield player.
Yeah.
This Dorgu sign, I think, is quite important for United because they've struggled, haven't they, with balance down that left-hand side. Luke Shaw returned to training this week just as they were looking to sign a replacement. I'm sure that's just a coincidence, but he's obviously missed a lot of football. Dalot has struggled on that left-hand side, played well last night, scored the goal, but again, you have to look at the opposition. The other bit of transfer news we have, and we spoke about this yesterday, Karu Matoma, Al Nassr putting in a big money bid for him. We said straight away on TalkSport, Brighton didn't want to sell, he didn't want to go. Al Nassr now have accepted, I'm told, that transfer won't happen because, of course, the Saudi transfer window closes today.
Does that mean that they've got a little bit of extra money to spend somewhere else between now and the end of that deadline? Let's talk about Arsenal because they've been charged with failing to control their players. It happened in the aftermath of Michael Oliver deciding to dismiss Miles Lewis-Skelly in that game against Wolverhampton Wanderers. The players surrounded Michael Oliver, couldn't believe it. The FA has obviously overturned that decision, the red card from the weekend, but they have said that Arsenal have been charged after its players surrounded a match official during the Premier League game against Wolverhampton Wanderers on Saturday. The club allegedly failed to ensure that its players did not behave in an improper manner around the 43rd minute of the game. They've got until Monday to provide a response. Now, should errors, and it was a clear error, and the FA have accepted that it was a clear error, provide mitigation for surrounding the referees, or do the FA have to be consistent in their approach in order to deter abuse like that? Because that's a natural reaction. If you feel wronged, all of you are going to get up and sort of surround the referee and say, come on, ref. Or does there need to be a structure in place where only the captains speak to the referee no matter what?
Well, that structure is supposed to be in place, isn't it? But it's not often
adhered to. It was in place. It was in place for the World Cup and the Euros, but it's not in place in the Premier League.
Well, I think it should be in place in the Premier League, and I understand the argument, and Arsenal fans were right to be so angry about the decision that ultimately didn't cost them the game, but obviously it did see a very promising young player sent off, which was a tough moment for him as you chuck drink over yourself.
Yeah, just water everywhere.
But I think in the heat of the moment, and it's difficult, but you need to stay calm, because I think if you look at it rationally, Mikel Arteta should have been thinking, well, that can't possibly stand. That is going to get overturned. Obviously, it could have cost them the game.
You can't think like that in the moment, though, can you?
No, but there's a fine line. You can be frustrated, but I think when you start surrounding referees, it does cross the line. And obviously, some of the stuff we've heard about threats made to Michael Oliver and the fact his family home is under police guard. Clearly, that's going over.
But that's different. In the heat of battle, and you're playing in a game, and you think you've now got to play 45 minutes with one man less, you are going to react and say, no, ref, come on, check that. Just check that on the VAR. I don't think, listen, to be honest with you, I haven't rewatched the incident again this morning, so I don't know how vociferous those protests were. But I do think that surrounding a referee is a bad thing to do in normal circumstances, but there are occasions when there is a little bit of mitigation. And this is probably one of those where everybody thought, well, hold on a second, this can't be real.
Yeah, I mean, it was such a poor decision. And it's not just on Michael Oliver, it's on the VAR as well. So you've got two very experienced Premier League referees who've both decided, actually, there's no case to answer, and that's a straight red card. That's more of a concern for me. I guess it does add insult to injury when the red card has already been overturned, that Arsenal are going to get a fine. But, you see it at grassroots level as well. I think our Premier League players do have an example to set, and therefore the FA have to clamp down.
And I know we both have experience of watching adults on the sidelines at kids' matches saying silly things that sort of should never have really been said, and it does deter referees taking up the profession in the first place. Our producer here is a referee, and he knows firsthand exactly what it's like to be trying to keep order in the middle of a game and people shouting abuse left, right and centre. It's not great, but I think there should be a process in place. If you want to end it and you want to, you need to have a voice as a team on the field of play.
That's the captain's job, isn't it?
It is, but it should be formalised that the captain can speak to the referee. I mean, Jack Lord here has just texted and said you wouldn't surround a police officer. Well, that isn't true, is it? If someone was being treated badly and you thought that they were being wronged, you would appeal to that police officer's better nature. I'm not necessarily saying that you would then... I mean, none of these players certainly were sort of violently threatening this referee. They were just making it quite visible. Yaz says, I know it's been said before, but we should take a page out of rugby's book regarding players and referees, and they should be a little bit more respectful. But I think if you don't put the mechanism in, then you're sort of inviting a cloudy area, an ambiguous area. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think they certainly should bring that rule back where only the captain can question decisions, if you like. By the way, while we're talking about officiating, we've both done European games this week. How much slicker is it in the Champions League with the automated offsides, semi-automated offsides?
Yeah, it doesn't
Why
take
on
very long.
earth for the Premier League not pulling their finger out and getting that over here?
Well, you know why? They've tried to put it in, but the testing hasn't been foolproof, and they want to make sure that it's 100% before they bring it in.
We are lagging behind.
I think also the idea of bringing it in halfway through a season now has probably sort of raised a couple of eyebrows. So I think they'll wait till next season.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they've got the technology. They've put the technology in. They've got what they think is more advanced technology than the one that the UEFA are using. So
I just think the whole VAR setup works better in these European games. It seems to be slicker. That the process doesn't take as long. I think.
Although, what about that Girona goal that got scrubbed out? Stuani, 38 years of age, record appearance holder, record goal scorer for Girona, scores an equaliser against Arsenal. It's a big emotional release from everybody who think that the last moment of their Champions League experience is going to be celebrated with their greatest player of all time scoring this goal. And it's chalked off by VAR for an infraction by somebody else.
Yeah, but he was offside when he crossed the ball. So,
Is it? Not when he crossed the ball, just before he was.
TalkSport Breakfast, waking you up Monday to Friday morning from 6 a.m. on AM, on DAB, via the TalkSport app and on your smart speaker. TalkSport.